All right, welcome back to our third part in our series on setting up your cookie consent banner and connecting it to Google Tag Manager so you can trigger your tags based on the consent of the user. Now, in the last videos, we have set up our cookie consent banner. We have connected it to Google Tag Manager with the consent overview screen. And now we want to actually trigger our tags based on the consent of the user. This is really the last step that you should be doing in order then to test and see if your tags fire or don't fire based on the consent of the user. Again, this is part 3 of 4 videos that we're going to publish here. If you want to check out the full-length video, you can head over to measureschool.com/consent, where we have the full video as well as some download and resources to deepen your knowledge in this kind of area. But for now, let's check out how we can trigger our tags based on the consent overview and the consent that has been given by the user with Google Tag Manager. All right, welcome back. In this video, we're going to take a look at how we can trigger our tags based on the consent that you give inside of the banner. So far, we have created the banner on the page or put that into Google Tag Manager so it's actually visible. We have connected it to the consent mode of Google Tag Manager. So we actually know if ad storage has been granted or analytics storage has been granted. Now, the next step would be to connect them to the actual tags so they fire correctly. And in this part, we can easily use Google Tag Manager. So for example, we have here the Facebook page view tag that we want to fire only if ads storage has been granted, if we have actual consent. This normally fires on all pages, and we are not messing with the trigger, but what we can be messing with is the consent state, which is a new setting in every tag under advanced settings here. You find consent settings right here. And right now, additional consent checks are not set, and we can say that we want to require additional consent, and this additional consent should listen to this ad storage right here, which we have set inside of our Google Tag Manager. So ad storage is currently false right here. So this is kind of like an additional trigger. It will look for ad storage and will also fire on all pages if both of them have been fulfilled and are true. Let's save this and try this out. We'll go to the page. Our consent mode opens up. Now, currently there's no cookie here. So on initialization, the update call should actually be denied right here. And once the container loads, this is where normally our tag would fire, and the other tags that don't have consent yet are firing. But Facebook ads is not firing. Why? Because it says here, not fired due to missing consent. So it has something to do with the consent. Unfortunately, it's not really surfaced inside of the interface just now, so we don't really know where the consent didn't work out. But the all pages trigger, it fired, yes, but due to consent issues, this didn't fire because we don't have yet any consent. What if you give the consent? Let's click on that's okay, and I'm going to reload the page. And this time on container loaded, we have our Facebook ads firing just normally. Doesn't really give us any consent indication, but it fired because we are on all pages trigger, and we also have in the variables now our consent state ad storage true. So again, this is a kind of like a second part of triggers that you can attach to the tag specific to consent. Now, what do you do with the other tags? Do you go through and go into the tag and then change that around? Yes, you can. But Google Tag Manager has this consent overview screen that we can utilize. And we see now that the consent has been configured for Facebook ads, but not yet for our other tags. So let's go ahead for Google Analytics. We want to add a consent here. It will require consent for analytics storage. And then we also have Google Ads here, and we can add both of them another ad storage there as well. Save this. And we have now consent configured for all our tags. So they should only fire when we give an appropriate consent. Let's try this out. Go to preview here as well. Well, this time I'm actually already set that anything could fire. So our tags all fire because we have consent. Let's go ahead and delete our cookie just to see whether if we make a choice to say, hey, I only want to fire the marketing tags, but not the analytics tags. Let's accept this. And I'm going to reload the page. And then on container loaded, we see Google Ads fired, Facebook Ads fired, but Google Analytics didn't fire because we didn't have consent to fire our analytics tools. Another test, get rid of this and do it the other way around. This time I'm only going to give analytics access. And let's see, that does inside, first I need to reload, container loaded, and we see only Google Analytics 4 fired, the others didn't fire. So this works as expected. Our tags are now firing based on the consent that we have given with our cookie banner. The thing that is missing right now is what happens when there is no consent given yet and the user clicks, for example, on that's okay. So at this point, when I click on that's okay, our container loaded already happened. So our Google Ads tags don't fire. Our consent is now updated. So on DOM ready, we see, okay, no, not actually on DOM ready. It's actually even later than window loaded because we have clicked on the event, but nothing actually shows up in the data layer. So we don't have a chance to fire our tags again. And we would need to wait for the user to go to the next page of his journey in order for then to our tags to fire correctly. So we need to have a mechanism to actually fire them on the first page. Very crucial for marketing attribution. So you want to make sure after the consent has given, right then and there, you want to fire your tags as well and check the consent as well in order to see if I can fire a tag or not. For that, we need to have a little bit of a workaround. There are tools out there that push directly into the data layer when you click OK. There are tools when you click I give consent that they will push something into the data layer. That's not the case with our consent banner, but luckily we can utilize a technique from Google Tag Manager again to pick up if the user made his choice, and that's a simple button click tracking. So if the user clicks on one of these buttons right here, decline, that's okay, or even the buttons down here, we'll be able to use this as a signal that the user has made his choice and updated his consent. And then we want to check if we should fire our tags again. So in order to build this in, we'll go with a simple button click tracking. You might notice from the other videos here, we're going to go to triggers and we're going to create a new click trigger on all elements. And this will be a generic one for now. Save this in preview. Then I'm going to click on the button that I actually want to track. We should have a new event here in the data layer called click. And then we can look into the variables. You need to have them enabled beforehand, click element, click ID, and so on. Unfortunately, there's no useful information in the click ID or the URL and also in the click text. So we'll need to go with the click element or click classes. We can take the click classes, and here we have something that is unique to these buttons. We don't want to go with the more specific one, success, because user could also decline, for example. So we're going to go with CM minus button right here, and we're going to turn our click trigger into a specific one. Once the user does his consent choice, we want to fire our tag when the click classes contains CM minus button. All right, once the user has made his choice, what do we want to actually do now? Now, your first thought might be, oh, we want to actually fire our consent mode update again. I'm just going to call this update based on what the user has chosen. This would be correct, but the problem that you are sometimes dealing with is race conditions. Race conditions are something that happen when you actually think, okay, I clicked on this tag, now my consent should have already been updated. So when I clicked on yes, that's okay, we see actually that our consent is still denied because our cookie was not yet updated. So we need to leave a little bit of time between when the user clicks and when he updates. Unfortunately, the best way I have found is to actually create a new tag that waits a few milliseconds and then actually updates the data layer so we can fire our other tags. So we need to take a little bit of a step in between here, and I'm going to go and create a new custom HTML tag. And in this custom HTML tag, I'll put in some code here that does our data layer pushes for us. And there are actually two pushes that I want to do. The consent choice, so that's when the user clicks the button. And then a few milliseconds later, and these are the milliseconds that it will wait to push this into the data layer, we will say consent updated, because we'll use this trigger to fire our consent mode and then this trigger to fire our actual tags later on. So let's go ahead and call this custom HTML. And this is our data layer push for our consent. And we'll trigger this on the actual consent choice mode when we clicked the button. So let's preview this and see if this actually works. Well, I actually need to get rid of the cookie first. So let's see consent banner again. And here we go. We have our consent banner back. And right now nothing fires. But when I click on that's okay, we should see that on the click, our custom HTML fired. And then a few seconds later or milliseconds later, we have consent choice and consent updated, the new calls that we can now utilize for our tag firing. So let's go ahead and actually build triggers for those. So this will be custom event triggers. So in our case, consent choice. And another one for our consent updated. So consent choice and consent updated. And now we have these triggers available and can fire our tags accordingly. So the first tag that we want to fire is when the user has made his choice, we need to update the consent mode. And we'll attach another trigger here that should fire on consent choice. And then once the consent choice is given, we want to also make sure that the tags that should fire on the first page also need to all have the same trigger, which is our consent updated trigger right here. Let's add them and go into preview. All right, so let me get rid of the cookie here again. So we see the banner. Okay, now we see the banner here. And if I click on that's okay, we should now see on consent updated, our different tags fire as well. So Google Ads, Google Analytics 4, and so on. So they didn't fire at the beginning here on all pages trigger, the container loaded. But later on, once we clicked on that's okay, then our tags fire. So this is now the expected behavior. This will not happen again when we go to the next page view, because here the consent is actually given, and on container loaded, we already see our tags fire as well. So we have now these two cases of this is firing if the consent has been given on another page previously, or if the user is on the actual landing page, he sees the banner for the first time, he clicks on a button, updates his consent choices, and our tags fire. Now you would obviously need to do this with any new tag that you create. So if you create, for example, let's say a new tag for LinkedIn or Twitter, we have here the LinkedIn Insights tag, and I'm just going to put in some dummy data, LinkedIn. The question would be, how do I now set up this trigger? Well, first of all, I want to fire this on all pages, but I also would like to fire this on consent updated, so the first page view. Then I also want to choose my advanced settings and choose the consent settings here and say this is only going to fire when the ad storage has actually been accepted as well. So that way we have now LinkedIn built in as a new tag. Obviously, you would need to change your consent settings, your banner as well, to reflect this change that you have installed a new LinkedIn tag. But that should also only now fire when ad storage has been granted. And in order to try this out one more time, let's actually use a mix here between just the marketing, although there's now 3 services, and we'll accept selected. And now on the accept selected, we have now Google Ads, but also LinkedIn firing. And on the next page view, we should have this again read from the cookie. So the consent is already given, and on container loaded, we have our LinkedIn as well. So this is how you can now trigger your tags based on consent overview, the consent mode. But this is actually not the consent mode that you might have heard of when it comes to Google Analytics or to Google Ads tags. In order to install the real consent mode for your G tags, we need to utilize a slightly different method, which I'm going to explain in the next video. All right, so there you have it. This is how you can trigger your tags based on the consent that has been given by the user, connected to Google Tag Manager with the consent overview. Now you could be already stopping there, but there's an exciting new feature within Google Tags, only Google Tags for now, called consent mode. And in order to make that work, we would need to tweak our implementation a little bit. This is what we're gonna do in the 4th part, which you can check out right over here if it's already available, or go over to measureschool.com/consent, where we have the full-length training as well as some downloads and resources ready for you to view. Now, my name is Julian. Till next time.